on the eye. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We're just waiting for everybody to be let into the Zoom before we can get started. We are ready. Kim, you will let me know when I can start. I don't believe in wasting people's time.
Okay, Prof, I think you can go ahead and start.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us on a cool Friday evening. And this is our thesis writing workshop. And each year, the Office of Graduate Studies and Research partner with the library because we know that many students are thinking about, or research students are thinking about graduation. And for them to make graduation, the time between submission and award of degree is 6 months, and we are 7 months out from the next graduation. And many of our MSc students are thinking of writing up their research project or their research paper so they can be awarded their degree at the end of the semester or maybe at the end of the summer. So we strategically placed this workshop here at this time of the semester because we know it's well needed. Last time when we did it, we had 300 students and we expect the same this afternoon. I'm Marcia Roy and I'm the Director for Graduate Studies and Research. This afternoon, we have some of my favorite people to talk to you about thesis writing. And when I come to introduce them, I will tell you why they are my favorite people. But first up is Mrs. Jessica Lewis Marshall. And these days, Jessica is one of my favorite person. You know why? I have to do lots of meetings and it's hard to find a meeting room. And one day Jessica just called and said, and we spoke about something. And she said, if you need a meeting room, you know, man, you can use the library multifunctional room because we have to be searching all over the place to find meeting rooms. So just thank you. Thank you very much for that support. So those are my opening remarks. I'm going to let the important people talk to you. So let's hear from our acting librarian. Jessica.
Thanks, Prof. Roy, and good afternoon to everyone. It's really a pleasure to welcome everyone to this session on thesis writing for academic success, which has been thoughtfully organized by the Office of Graduate Studies and Research in collaboration with the Mona Library. We just want to let students know that UWI Mona Library is your dedicated research ally on this academic journey that you're on, and we are here as a partner to empower you with our resources, the expertise of our librarians, and to just generally offer support anytime, anywhere. We know that you're on a very kind of complex journey as you do your research, and the library is a powerful ally in all of that. I want to direct you to the Mona Information Literacy Unit, which is the focal point for graduate students in the library. This specialized unit helps students to get the skills and competencies they need for thesis success. And so partnering with us is going to be extremely helpful as you undergo the research process. I think that today's session is going to be extremely useful and extremely interesting. And so thank you, and I'll let the program begin.
Right, and just to remind everyone that your thesis, your research thesis cannot go out to examiners until the library approve that. It is formatted properly and all the references are okay and it's following all the thesis guide rules. So the library is very important to us. And before you make your final submission, after it comes back from the examiners, the library have to approve again before your degree can be awarded. So they're very important to the process that we do here at Graduate Studies. Now, on to tips for organizing and writing your thesis. Professor Weber, please let the people see you. Okay, so Professor
Hello,
Weber.
Director. Hello, colleagues.
Professor Weber and I met in 1989. He don't like
Why
to
you have
talk
to
about
start
dates. He
there?
kind of muddle it, but I have a elephant brain, so I talk about time. So I was doing a botany course in science and technology, and Dale was my TA. But I tell people that he was my TA, and they think I was the lecturer and he was a student, but it's not true. Then he came through the ranks, lecturer, senior lecturer, head of department, professor, and Professor Weber was the associate dean before I became associate dean, and Dr. Curtis Busby Earl was the associate dean after me. Okay, so this is a powerhouse from science and technology. But he was also PVC for graduate studies and research, and then principal and PVC. And today, let me read it for you. Professor Dale Weber has been appointed Jamaica's first envoy for climate change, environment, ocean, and the blue economy. Special Envoy Weber will engage in international dialogue and technical negotiations, ensuring Jamaica's interests remain at the forefront of global environmental policy and action. So the little boy from Manchester become diplomat. Over to you, Professor Weber. It's wonderful to see you. I can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us.
Thank you very much, Director Roy. And I don't know why you had to go down memory lane, since what you asked me to do today has nothing to do with any of the things that you just mentioned. You asked me to speak in my capacity as the Director of the Center for Marine Sciences, which I will. And I think, good afternoon to you. I see there are 116 of persons online. Good afternoon to you all.
Yeah, we're going to get 300, Dale. Just watch.
I know you will. And if you ask me why I think I was willing to do this, because I think over the years I have had probably more graduate students than most people, and it's been an interesting ride working with them, sometimes working against them, but coming up with an end product of over 60 graduate students. So I'm going to talk today about some tips for organizing and writing a thesis. Thank you very much, Director Roy, for inviting me, and Kem for conning me into it. This presentation today is, firstly, it is not prescriptive. I'm not telling you what to do. I am describing what I have done with my students, and then you can pick from this what you think is important. We're going to talk about sequencing writing, since that is important. Well, I find it to be. We're going to look at just a little bit about research questions, hypotheses, and suppositions, the conceptual framework, which you should have done. Many of you should have gotten there already. I'm jumping over literature review and methods because I see my colleague, my able colleague, Dr. Busby Earl will be taking that. I'm going to do a little bit on results, on discussion, and then writing tips and staying motivated. So I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. So in writing a thesis, you all started with a proposal, which is really a problem statement, which is the reason for doing what you're doing. And you need to keep that firmly in your mind. In fact, I tell students, write it on a big piece of cartridge paper, or keep it at the top of your computer, or put it on your desk, just keep out one sentence as to what's the problem you're trying to solve, because you need to come back to that all the while. You need to work through a conceptual framework, which is going to help you focus what is there, because you could get down many rabbit holes. You're going to do a literature review, which sets the context, and you must know what others have said, because you're really hoping to fill gaps that they have left or to take them in a different direction. You want to have a method section that is current, and in fact, my advice, as I'll tell you shortly, is write the methods while you do them. You're going to have a results, which I tend to find results are best driven by a sequence of do it by sections, do it by parameters, do it by elements, do it by research topics. The analysis that you're going to have is going to be the proof of the pudding that the results have showed you. And the discussion usually is done going back to the hypothesis or the research question, not trying to explain the results bit by bit, but we'll come to that in a section. The last bit is the introduction. And you write this last because you don't know what it is you're introducing if you try and write it first. You can write it first, but you're going to rewrite it, I'm sure. And your abstract is a condensed version of that. And the library will tell you 300 words, right, Jessica? After that, you are waffling. So what is your research question? Your research question is usually a one general topic. It may have subtopics, it may have sub-questions, but you want to have one specific question which you're trying to answer. You're gathering data to either disprove or prove a hypothesis or answer a question or come up with the results that allow others to question. And by the way, remember the wrong view, I should do a disclaimer. As Professor Roy said, I am from the Faculty of Science and Technology, and so is Curtis. So you're gonna get a science dose today. The wrong view of science is thinking you're right. The right view of science is putting your information out there so others can take it, put it together, take it apart, and prove that you are not wrong. So you never try to say, I am right. You leave it for others to say, you cannot be wrong. So you want a research question which should be in the fore of your mind constantly. It could result in a research hypothesis, which allows you to test. So that's really a question, a research question that's testable. And remember, we're going to work with the null hypothesis. For instance, there is no difference between X and Y in terms of their cohort behavior, or it's a tentative explanation about what's there, and you're testing to see whether it is so or not. You don't have to have a hypothesis. Not all questions are hypothesis driven. Some questions are just questions, and some are even statements that need to be expounded and more information provided. So you may or may not have a hypothesis. Literature review and research methods, as I said, the able Deputy Dean from the Faculty of Science and Technology, Dr. Busby Earle, is going to deal with that. So I am not even spending some moments on that. However, I think you need to do a conceptual framework, and they can be very elaborate. I've seen some which take 2 pages, almost like a Gantt chart. But I try to keep it simple. Every project should have an input, which is, so what are you putting into this research? What are going to be the input? Is it going to be in science? It could be heights, weights, it could be temperature, salinity if your environment and in the oceans. It could be number of persons. It could be, so what's the input? What are you putting into it? Process. A number of inputs get composed, recomposed, and put with other things to give you an overall answer. So the process is taking many inputs over time, over space, over concepts to give you an output. And the output is your result. The output is the fact. The output is what you put on the table, put on the board to say, here's where I am. The outcome is the evidence of what the facts mean or what the result ends up being. So the outcome is different from the output. And if you take, this is a simple linear conceptual framework. I like to say, do at least this. You can get very technical and you can get a much wider one, but I like to keep it simple and have it just in a line. You then should be able to list your inputs, and you should have a number of inputs, the different variables and parameters you're measuring. You should have methods, and you can have multiple methods. You then would have some outputs, and you should be able to document those. And finally, you're going to write your outcome. Your method section, as I said, Dr. Busby Earle is going to do it, but I'll give you 2 slides of my thoughts. You need to lead the reader. The information that's there is going to be far too much for them, for any reader, whether it's your examiner or your supervisor or the person in the library who's going to look at it to take on. You need to lead the reader to where it's going to go. So you need a small introduction in your methods. Don't just jump into, I did this. You have to give them some setting. Now remember, it is a method section, not a methodology. Methodology technically is a research, a literature research, or an analysis of methods to decide which method you're going to use. And you should do that because there are many methods to do things. When you are writing it, you have conducted a method, a methodology. Please write it as you do it. Do not trust your memory. I know that I'm from the old school and I will say write it down, meaning get a piece of paper, but you nowadays, your generation or many in this generation would say they're putting it on their phone, they're writing it here, they're putting it up in their Google space, or they're saving it to the cloud, wherever you want to do it. But the important thing is to write it as you do it. You will not remember 6 months from now or a year from now, how exactly did we do that? And if you get questioned, whether it is in your oral examination or your examiners look at the thesis and they find a hole in something that's a standard method and say, but this is not how it's done all over the world, you will not be able to remember what you've done. Write it as you do it. Write in past tense, active or passive, doesn't matter. Write it for the reader. I keep telling my students that when you write a method, your best friend should be able to do it. If you can't, if you needed one more sample date, you missed one thing and they say, okay, you sampled in the rainy season, you need one sample in the dry season, but you can't go for some reason. Somebody should be able to read your method and repeat it exactly as you did it. It should be extendable, meaning added to what you've done. So it's another sample point, dot, and it should be explainable in that why you're doing it the way you do it. So write it for the reader, write it for the reason, write it with logic, write it with the enough details so that it can be adequate in terms of the methodology that you have, the methods that you're using. It's reliable and it's valid. So everybody can take it down, and then write it for its completeness. If you can't write it all down, make a list, then come back to it. Commit, do not omit. Put everything in. You can always take it out later when you're writing if you think it's too much details. Use subheadings. I like structure to my method section. I like something that says, okay, here's the site description, here's the sample program, here's the specialized equipment. So don't be afraid to use subsections because it helps the reader follow logically what's there. And logic is the key. So logic gives you organization in terms of sequence. Separate fieldwork from lab work. Separate statistical analysis from numerical analysis if you're using graphs. Depend on numbers or use numbers. Picking up a thesis, and I'm now putting on the hat of having examined over 100 theses here at UWI. Tell me that you've had 1,080 samples, grabs my attention. This is not 5 samples that you collected yesterday afternoon. This is 1,000 samples. So N becomes large and captures my attention. Tell me it's 24 months if you're doing something, especially in biological sciences. So you don't have just one summer, you actually have 2. You may have 3 seasons. Put the dates in there because it may mean something to the reader. It may be, oh, that was the year we had the hurricane, or that was the year we had the extended drought. Tell us how many stations you had. Tell us how much replicates you had. Tell us that you did calibration each time before you sampled if you're using chemistry or biological physical equipment. And use standard methods in your design. So there are books and texts which tell you how you always do things. Use those. You can reference them properly, but they're already tried and proven. Don't reinvent the wheel. Design your sample, design your collection, and your statistical package based on what you have and where you want to go. Results. Now, as you get to the results, you need to lead your reader again. It's going to be a lot of information. I've seen some theses which are, smallest thesis I've seen is about 110 pages. The largest one is 500. You cannot read it in one sitting, so you need to read, have the reader follow you. So introduce what is to come. Tell them what's going to happen. This results section is going to have this section and then that and then that. So sequence for them so they can follow. I suggest using a template of your research questions or your objectives or your aims from your introduction to guide how the results should flow. Remember that you're going to have descriptive as well as inferral sections to your results. And even in the descriptive, you need to separate verbal from numerical. And again, remember, this is not prescriptive. This is what I do. You're going to have to separate how you do them. And I'll come to that next. In the secondary or inferral results, you want to present enough information and convince by logic. The statistical evidence is really the key that locks the door. So everything sums up to the statistics. But the interesting thing is that the statistics often get done first, but not present it first. What do you present first? First thing you want to do is to do your general descriptive data. That's just getting your results together. You want the mean, the median, the midpoint, whatever you use as your mode of central tendency. You get your standard deviation, your variance, your range. You get your descriptions if you have to do transformations. If your data needs log transform or square root transform, you need to tell us that you're doing it and why you're doing it. And you need to figure out if it's in percentages, proportions, if it's a Likert method, if you're going to have a scale of 1 to 5. You need to tell us all of that in the method, and then as you present it in the results, you're going to remind us that this is how these data are. And you might find that you have one section that deals with data that's going to be numerical, another set that's going to be descriptive, but you need to say exactly what they are. In the numerical, you want to have key numbers in the text. So as you read the text, some numbers should jump out at you, but you should try and tabulate wherever possible the numbers that you have. If you have more than 2 or 3, so you're going to have more than 2 or 3 numbers to have, you might as well put it in a table and get it in a better format. Figures allow you to follow trends in numbers. So before you even start writing the results, you want to do the descriptive of the data that you have so that you can get all the numbers, decide what's the best way to spread it out in front of persons. At this point, you want to get the statistical analysis. Please get help. Don't be a hero. Don't try and figure that I know all the stats or I can apply. It is easy to make wrong decisions with stats. Have you ever read a book called How to Lie with Statistics? It works because it helps you. For me, it grounded me. Here's an example. Professor Weber is the greatest lecturer ever. Why? He's had 100% pass for the last 5 years in his course. The statistics will tell us that Professor Weber has, in fact, had 100% pass, but guess what? Every year for the last 5 years, he's had 1 student in the class. It therefore is correct. It is not a lie, but those statistics will not stand up to scrutiny. So get help to know what statistic application you should be using, what kind of method. Should it be parametric? Should it be non-parametric? Are you going to be using mixed methods? How do you gather the data? So all of that you need to know early so you're making the right decisions. Part of the delivery, of course, is the verbal, and you lead with your verbal. Result sections that start with a number, a table, or a graph completely throw off the reader. You need to read the thesis and refer to the numbers. Read the text and refer to the table. Read the trends and refer to a graph or a figure that's going to take you there. Use words that interpret what's happening so the reader can follow you. Explain some of the difficult trends or some of the difficulties that you see in a table. And don't think that your reader has been with you in the journey. They're coming to it for the first time. You need to take them to the logical figures or the logical parts of each table. Use standard units. That's what people expect you to use. And don't mix your units. So don't put some in grams and some in pounds. Don't put some in feet and some in meters. Keep it all straight. Rely on magnitude in terms of what's the big picture. You could get tied down in the weeds, and that's when you do that, you end up doing every nitty-gritty and forget what the big picture is. Point out things that the readers may miss because they don't have the same handle as you. They haven't been working this for 2, 3, 4 years. You know some things that are important. You know some thresholds that have been crossed. You know some standards that have been met. Point out those things, but avoid generalizations. Your thesis is not the first, and it will not be the last that covers this subject area. So don't try and generalize as if this is all things to all people. My PhD supervisor taught me the repeated feather method works better than the sledgehammer. You could come with a lot of information and with one big swipe try and say, and here is the thesis, sledgehammer. We found that the repeated feather, as light as a feather is, if you get 100 touches with a feather in one spot of your body, you will remember it as much as you do one sledgehammer. You're trying to gradually convince your reader. In terms of do's and don'ts, so some do's for your discussion. I think you should go back to the research question or the hypothesis and tackle it head on. You can actually use the research questions as subheadings in the discussion, and discussions can have subheadings. Don't think it has to be one long continuous monologue. Break it into small bite sizes and answer each question. State how well your data argue. That is, did it help? Did it give you the information that you wanted? What's the probability that you tested it at? Refer to the variables that you're using by name. Don't leave your reader to try and follow them, and don't use abbreviations. Where the variables all say the same thing, don't tell us one and then the other and then the other. Go through 5 different variables that all have the same answer. Group them together in your discussion. In your results, you need to boringly kind of go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 did this. But in your discussion, you want to group them all together and say all 5 of these and name them show the same trend. And it therefore tells us X, so it takes you to a certain destination. Point out patterns and trends, especially when it comes to spatial or temporal data, because you have the coverage of time. Make the interpretations from those data and always look for the wow factor. What is the big picture? What have we learned from this that we didn't know before? That wow factor usually comes back to the research question. Describe the processes that got you there. What kind of mechanism could be in place? And don't think that, as I said, you're not going to be the first and you're not going to be the last. Compare your data with others, go with the literature, but remember, you are going to be adding to the body of knowledge. What new are you adding? But you're adding to the body of knowledge. If you have do's, you also have don'ts. Do not restate the results. I already have a section that is called results. Do not go back and restate them. You can have information which reminds them, but don't restate the results. Don't restate the problem statement. Get on to writing the discussion as it stands. Do not write a summary or an abstract. There's a section of the thesis called abstract that goes at the beginning. Do not try and justify or apologize for the results. They are what they are. And don't try and tweak them. You need to stand by your results because that is how data science moves along. Can you imagine if the first person who found that the moon was not where they expected it to be decided, no, everybody say it's supposed to be there, or the world was flat. No, everybody say it's flat. I'm not proposing the roundness that I know. Stand by your data. That's how we make new advances and knowledge. Don't discuss all the things that went wrong in there. Don't try and apologize and say, well, because of this didn't happen, and the rain fell and something else. And don't dwell on what really could be a future. I mean, there's a lot of studies that say, in the future, we could do X, Y, and Z. The first thing I do when I'm examining a thesis and it says, in the future, we could do X. And I say, and why didn't you do it now then? So don't go down that road. If you've written an introduction before you start, I'm sure that by the time you're through or at this point of the discussion, you are going to reintroduce because it's now something different. You can only introduce what you know about. But the introduction should set some background. It should find out what others have said. You're going to hear that from the literature review shortly. It should interest you as to why you want to go further and read in thesis. It should say, what are the limitations of others? What are the gaps that I'm trying to fill? And what's the new body of science that it brings? Introduce the relevance of what you're doing. And please check your references. I don't know what method you'll use in terms of trying to keep a track of your references, but you need to check them constantly and check them at the end. Write the abstract last. And that is 5 or 6 bullets. Abstract shouldn't go over a page. In fact, it should be half a page. Why you did the work, where you did the work, what method you use, what did you find in terms of the 1 or 2 big picture, what's the significance of it, why should I bother to read this thesis, why should I care? That's what your abstract is all about. Some general tips then. I find if you have a setting in which you can get these things done, it helps you. Don't try and tackle statistics alone. I find we have courses in all our faculties, all our departments that have statistical analysis as part of the course. Get into one of those courses and don't be afraid to put your data out there. Have other people crunch your data and say, use it as an example, use it as a part of a class and let the answers come up. You may never be able to find it individually, but throw it into a class setting and get help. Question is, when are there enough data? I know many graduate students keep saying, I don't have enough, I need to keep going. I don't have enough, I need another year of data. There are some people who could be here 5 years, 7 years. In fact, the longest thesis I know of, the longest research that has led to a thesis, somebody was here 13 years. I think Professor Roy know who we're talking about, because we eventually had to pull the plug and send them on their way. Hypothesis testing and problem solving is important, but get help on it so that your hypothesis is testable and that the problem can be solved. Can you ask the uncomfortable questions early, please? Don't wait until a year, 2 years, 3 years into the study to then ask the questions. Ask them early. If you're not sure, ask the question. The only stupid question is the one you didn't ask. Write a thesis outline. When you think you're ready to put this together, write a thesis outline. Just write the chapters that the thesis will maintain. Leave room for the unknown because you don't know what you're going to find as you go further along. But create chapter titles, create a table of contents. It helps you look at the holistic picture of what this thesis is. Other things that I think I have found, again, I'm being descriptive, not prescriptive. I find that we write, especially in the Caribbean, we write like we're writing for the gleaner. A thesis is not a mystery. It's not a novel. It's not a whodunit. It's not the butler did it. It is give me the information and then explain it. Big picture first. Use subheadings wherever you can and make your sentences short and sweet. There's nothing that annoys me more than a sentence where I have to catch my breath 4 times before I get to the end. I've forgotten what you've said at the beginning by the time I've gotten to the end. Let your paragraphs flow, but let it be your style. Everybody writes in a different style, but get your paragraphs to flow one after the other. Avoid some of the catchy phrases and jargons because I don't know that you know what they mean, and you may not know what they mean. Don't use them if you can avoid them. Use your pronouns unambiguously, so don't get caught in taking yourself into different.
Hello, I think he's
your
muted.
nouns and describe.
No,
Not hearing me?
I'm here. We're hearing.
Oh, we're
Yeah,
hearing.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay.
hearing.
That would be a pity because I'm almost at the end. So give credit where credit is due. You all know about the issue of plagiarism, using your quotation marks, attribution, and how to reference. The library is there to help you with that. And again, I said check your references clearly. Proofread, you must proofread. Get somebody to proofread for you if you can't proofread it. Proofread means getting into a certain mindset. It means stepping away from the work, coming back and reading it and ask yourself, is which idiot write this? And you realize you're the idiot, but you're in a different mindset. You get a chance to correct it before you submit it. Spell check is there for a reason. Grammarly is there for a reason. Punctuation, check all of those things because this is a body of work. My PhD supervisor, I think, reminded me. He said, I did a wonderful thesis, but be sure it's right. When that thesis goes to the library, nobody will be there to say, oh, Weber was a nice chap and he wrote a nice thesis. They're actually going to it to find holes in it so they can build their thesis. So it has to defend itself. I would suggest keeping a regular meeting with your supervisor, and whether it's once a semester, once a whatever period, and keeping notes of that meeting so you can remind yourself and remind the supervisor. You need to give as many in-house seminars as you can, that is within your group, your research group, or your department, or your faculty, so others can see the work. Collective wisdom takes us a far way. You need to review the processes so that you can defend it constantly. If I wake up in the middle of the night, you should be able to defend the thesis without the paperwork, without the slides or anything. Set clear goals that you can work towards. And if you achieve them, tick a box. You'll feel good. If you don't achieve them, reset the goals. Don't punish yourself. You're on a treadmill, but your treadmill needs to be directional and going somewhere. Present your findings at external conferences when you've gotten to the end, because that's going to make a big difference, both in your confidence as well as you being known and your data and your work getting out there. Always reflect on why you're doing it and the importance. My advice is look forward, not back. You can't change what's behind you. Continuous corrections, you're going to get them from your supervisor. You need to know your supervisor. Some supervisors like to chastise. Like, again, I'll give you my experiences. I had a supervisor who would tell me everything that was wrong with my work because he knew he would challenge me to say, well, I'm going to come back and you won't find a single mistake. Other supervisors and student relationships like uncle and niece or nephew, where you actually coerce and you encourage. Set mutual dates that both of you can work with. This is your supervisor and yourself. You need to demonstrate the interest in your thesis. It's your thesis, not your supervisor's thesis. They have theirs already. You need to make your thesis work for you. Provide reading before each meeting. To come to a meeting and give the supervisor something that you've written and say, here, I finished this. They need to go read it first before they talk to you. So I usually suggest 2 weeks before you're going to meet, let them have something in their hands. He or she will then give you better feedback. Ask for corrections repeatedly. Don't let it be one and walk away. It's a continuous engagement. But when you get them, when you get the corrections, it's like getting your first thesis, your first paper submitted. I don't know if you've gotten one accepted yet. Those of us who are in academia, the first paper you get back, you almost cry. You didn't know that academics could be so brutal. They will tell you things like, this is absolute rubbish. What concept is here? You need to not panic, not rush, work through it slowly. The word draft has a meaning. I call it draft. The draft is what keeps you afloat and takes you to the next place. You need to write a first draft so that you can get a sense of what's there. How does it hold together? Don't be afraid to leave out some of the data you've sampled for 3.5 years. You cannot get 3.5 years of data into the experiment, into the thesis. You have to leave out something. Be judicious about it, what you're going to leave out. Conference presentations are a good way to determine how you do that. Your advisory committee is a way to spread beyond just your supervisor. Get the rest of the members of your committee who have different skill sets to come on board, make them a presentation, and they'll come back to you. A transfer seminar is that one big step where you move from an MPhil to a PhD. That is a life changer, but that is like taking the first draft to the second draft. And a departmental seminar is your opportunity to show your department what you're doing. It's going to be constructive criticism. Don't be afraid within your department. They're your friends, they're your home, but you need to own it. It's your chance to be egotistical without apology. You are the expert in this now. By the time you're through, you even know more than your supervisor. Don't be afraid to make it happen. Finally, self-examine. Check if you have met your objectives. Repeat the methodology over and over to check if it's correct so you can have confidence when anybody asks you, you know exactly why it's done. Look for what's original. Look for what's a big achievement. Review what you've done in terms of interpretation so that you can stand behind it. Standalone presentations should be able to be understood. So a figure shouldn't need a lot of explanation. It should have everything there. A table, the caption should tell me all I need to know. The text is going to tell me the highlights. Check your references. I mean, it's the third time I'm saying it. I'm cross-reference. It is the key to making the academic pursuit strong. And check for plagiarism over and over. Self-defend, because that's the best defense you have. Make your conference presentations work and your publications. Identify which journal it can go to. And by the way, for journals, aim for the highest impact factor. Let them say no. Guess what? They're going to send about constructive criticism so you can fix what was wrong. Then take the next impact factor down and send it out again. Focus your publications at one at a time. I know your thesis is going to have 5 in there, 5 papers, but you can't publish them all at the same time. You can't write them all at the same time. Work with your supervisor to make it happen. Thesis by manuscript is a new thing, but I'm not going to touch that because I'm out of time. So I'm just being descriptive, not prescriptive. I've given you some sequences in writing. I wanted to have a research question or hypothesis, and you must have a framework. Look at your method, plan your results, talk about your discussion, look at the writing tips, but always stay motivated. I hope that helps. I hope it helped you. Make the best of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Special Envoy. We appreciate all your kind words. You see, you went through it step by step, and I especially like the draft. That keeps you floating. That's what the draft is. So rework it, okay? So Professor Weber will not be able to stay with us because he has a 3 o'clock. So Curtis, I'm going to ask your permission just to take a few questions for anybody who might have questions. Dale, just drop your email in the chat. So if the team have questions, then they can send it. And yes, of course, they've been asking if we will share the presentation. And of course, we will share the presentation. In fact, I might steal a few slides from this one because it's point on, but we know your experience. That's why we ask you here.
Before Prof. Weber goes, I just have a question. Miss Kemarine Myers, what kind of setup is this that you have here? I did not know that I was going to make a presentation after the erudite, right honorable ambassador,
special envoy,
special envoy, Dr. Dale Weber. That is a setup.
No, man, you're all right.
Curtis, you don't know how Kim can set us up.
Come on,
I won't tell you how she get me to do this, okay?
Listen, Curtis, try them tricks with me all the time. Call Professor Eldamar Shira when I won't comply, so please. Kemar, I see your hand is up. You have a question for Professor Weber.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Prof. Weber. My question is, my research I'm conducting, I have to be conducting it away from Jamaica. And the problem I'm having is based on the topics or potential topic that I've chosen, it's becoming increasingly difficult to get the data on the ground because I'm not there. I have a deadline to complete this program by the end of May, but the problems I'm having is really as it pertains to the data collection. So how do you, what do you recommend in a situation like that?
All right, so let's take it from the beginning. So I take it you're doing a body of research which requires collection from outside of Jamaica. So you're going to be, is it number of countries or just one other country?
It could be, so I'm looking at high schools in Jamaica. High schools in Jamaica, that was what we settled on, but yeah, the data collection, me not being there, having no foot soldier, and I also sought to get some entity that could assist with the collection, but they're charging a arm and a leg for that. Yeah.
Well, Kamara, it sounds like what you need to do is to go back to the research question. You need to ask yourself, what question are you asking so that what new body of information are you bringing forward so that
Okay.
your research then matches that? Because maybe you're asking too wide a question. Maybe you're asking a question that needs to focus more in one location. That's why I ask if it's a number of locations or it's a single location. Is it, I mean, you said school system. Right away, I'm
Yes.
asking, so is it primary, secondary? Is it tertiary? Is it private schools? Is it public schools?
It's high schools, so yeah.
All right, so you need to then figure out what's your N in terms of how many schools do you need and how many samples do you need within the school to be able to represent. So you need to sit with the supervisor and look at the research questions to decide
Okay.
if the data collection is being over ambitious. And that's something we tend to do. Remember,
Okay.
a thesis is not a lifelong work. It's a part of
No.
your life, but it's not the whole life.
Okay, sir. Noted. Thank you very much for that, Prof. Weber.
No problem,
Okay.
And
Kamara.
greetings to you, sir.
I didn't realize which Kamara it was until I heard your voice. Good to hear
Okay,
you,
no
Kamara.
problem. You too, sir. Yeah.
That's why we love you, Dale, because you're wise. I would just tell Kamara, change your country. All right. Anybody else who have a burning question for Professor Weber, remember?
Yes, I do.
Um,
May I ask, please? Thank you, without putting up my hand.
okay, Delia, go ahead.
Hi, Professor Weber. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Delia?
Well, after this, I should be better. Anyway,
But
I
that's
won't.
the objective. That's the objective. Everybody should find something in this that relates to who they are and where they are.
Okay, I won't put in any history in terms of when I met you, but it's okay. I am one of the bad students, I must admit, where I am stuck in a rabbit hole. And in terms of your presentation, you were on, I mean, the methods you're speaking about, you were scientific because I think in social sciences, for me, some of the some of the things you spoke about, I wasn't really familiar with it in terms of my method will be more qualitative, and I just wanted to know that, well, I just want to confirm that you were specifically speaking to a scientific, meaning that, well, your sciences versus social sciences. I just want to confirm that. So I wasn't really
Absolutely. So
okay.
the disclaimer at the start was that Marcia, Curtis, and I are all from the Faculty of Science, and that's our strength. We
Okay.
will veer into other areas, but no, this presentation was from a science standpoint. There are things in there that non-scientists will be able to take away, but yeah, it was from a science standpoint, a science background.
Okay. All right. And I appreciate it because, I mean, sometimes the motivation factor up to this week was challenging, but I will push through. All right. And thanks
All right.
again.
Okay,
And
you're welcome.
congrats on your recent appointment.
Thanks.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, diplomat, we're gonna let you go because we know how busy you are, but your information is there. If anybody have a question for Professor Weber, not able to reach him, then you can send us at Graduate Studies and we will get it to him. But remember, he was also PVC for Graduate Studies and Research. So whenever I'm in a tight spot in this job, he's usually the guy that I reach out to. Give him a good advice. Still doing it. Thank you very much, my friend. Have a good evening. It was good sharing with you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's great to be doing what I love and loving what I do again.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, Curtis, are you ready?
Yes, I am, Marcia. Whenever
All
you're ready.
right, your time. So Curtis is going to tell us a little bit about literature review and methodology of research. Over to you, Dr. Busbear.
Right, just confirm you're seeing my screen.
Yes, we're
Oh,
seeing the screen.
We're seeing it.
It's
okay,
very
so
small.
it's very small. Okay, probably it's just the size of the actual screen. But thank you very much, first and foremost, for the invitation this afternoon. And I'd also like to say a very warm welcome and thank you very much to all of the members of the audience who have joined us and decided to spend a bit of time with us here this afternoon. In addition to some bits of the literature review that Prof. Weber just spoke about, I'll be talking about the research proposal generally and methods of research. And I've also tried, as Prof. Weber said, yes, I'm also in the sciences, but I've tried to make it a bit more general so that you, I hope, will find some information that will be applicable to those of you who are actually not in the science and technology fields. So at the start, you've decided, okay, you're going to, you want to engage in
Curtis, it's too small for us to read. It's just occupying maybe 1/10 of what I'm looking at here. So we can't. So I don't know if maybe you can unshare and try again.
Okay, let me try that. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
too
I
large
don't
on
know
my
why it's
side.
doing that. Yeah, it's technology sometimes. It does work.
Let me see. Okay.
Just be sure you're in presentation mode and not just viewing the PowerPoint from your screen.
So yeah, I had it in presentation mode. I'm going to increase the font size.
Maybe turn off your camera too, because sometimes the bandwidth might be affected, and so we prefer to see
All
the
right.
presentation.
Oh, I have no problem with that.
So try again and let's see.
Well, I'm seeing that part of this is being. Okay, tell me, how is that any better?
So it's coming. Yeah. That's much better. A little piece of it is cut off, but it's much bigger.
Let's see if I can get that. Yes, this definitely is technology at play.
Yeah. So we're good. We have 99% of it.
All right. So as I was
Yeah.
saying, when you begin with to engage in research, you have some questions that I would strongly suggest that you answer, all right, and you think about. And so, okay, so you might be in the sciences, you might be in the social sciences, you might be in education, no problem. But what exactly is your area of study? You have to have, yes, a general idea, but with regard to research, you will start, again, generally speaking, in a general area of interest. But then when you engage in research and you're working towards a thesis and your PhD, you're actually then going to be focusing and narrowing your focus on a particular area of that area of study. And that's what you need to get some focus on fairly early. And so you should also answer or think about answers to any of these. What is the problem that you aim to solve or the question that you wish to answer? And these are just some of the things that you could ask yourself. You don't have to answer all of them, but depending again on whether you're in the social sciences, the science and technology faculty, think about them. Are you going to investigate a theorem that you have read about maybe sometime during a particular course in your undergraduate studies? Or maybe it's you've finished your first degree and you've been working for a while, and there's some bits in your profession that you've seen, and it's just been there in the back of your mind, and you think you have a solution for it. Well, then what is it that you're thinking of solving? Maybe there's a hypothesis that you aim to prove as an explanation for some observed phenomenon, right? And then, well, why is that solution that you have in the back of your mind, or the answer, the theorem or hypothesis, important? And not just to you. Remember, there'll be others who will be reading your thesis. And so what in that thesis will engage them? What would keep them interested in reading that thesis? And then, as Prof. Weber also mentioned, will it add to the existing body of knowledge in your chosen area of study? Right? So these are 4 things, 4 questions as you begin your journey that you should have at your fingertips the answer. And why? Well, if you can convince yourself and your supervisor that you have the answers to all 4 of those aforementioned questions, then I think you'll be ready to start developing your research proposal and to undertake and engage in your research journey. And so once you have that, then you can begin to put your thoughts to paper. And you can begin by crafting your research proposal, which is just a document that's used for the basis for your thesis, right? And so you'll start with that proposal and you will work on it, you will add to it, it will begin to grow. Prof. Weber also gave you many excellent tips on how you can go about writing that thesis. But there is a starting point. And that starting point is typically therefore comprised of 5 sections, generally speaking. There's the preliminary section, there's the introduction, there's the literature review, the research methodology, and of course then there are references. So let's just take a look at these 5 sections in that document. So the preliminary pages, what you'd include here are the title page, the table of contents, any figures, tables, abbreviations, and so on. And remember, you are all members of the University of the West Indies, community at Mona. And as a consequence, regardless of the fact that you may be in the Faculty of Social Sciences or Humanities and Education or Law or Science and Technology, the final thesis, that document must conform to a particular standard. And that standard and the guide that defines that standard, you can visit it here at this link. And so you must follow that guide. And it's also that guide that will help you to ensure that you adhere to what the library and the librarians will be looking at in terms of your thesis. Because as Prof. Roy also mentioned, a part of the entire process that's involved in you submitting and being awarded your degree is having the librarians take a look at that thesis and ensure that it conforms to the university's standards. So remember, once you begin to start putting pen to paper, follow this format. You don't want to have started and gotten, let's say, into chapter 3 of your 6-chapter thesis, only to realize that you haven't actually followed the guide. You'll have to go back and really and truly, other than the content, you'll have to start from scratch, because it includes certain fonts, the sizes, where things are to be located, the sizes of margins, and so on, right? So that guide is very important. The introduction. Remember, I said that you have to engage the people who will be writing a thesis, who will be reading a thesis. And so a part of that is to also demonstrate to them through your writing that you are knowledgeable of what it is you are about to share with them. And so a part of that would be a background discussion of your work. Set the stage. Prof. Weber said that there were two general, again, approaches to writing a thesis. There's the sort of traditional or standard one, and then there's the thesis by manuscript. But in both cases, there should be some link from chapter to chapter that provides that kind of detail as to how that information from one bit of the discussion that's included in your thesis flows to the next, right? That's a good way of keeping your reader engaged. And so you start with that background discussion of your work. And you talk about the actual statement of what your work will aim to accomplish based on those questions that I suggested you ask yourself at the start. What are the objectives of the work you are undertaking to investigate? What's the justification of the work? Or why is it of any significance to anyone outside of maybe your area or outside of you, right? I mean, we all think that what we have come up with or what we've created is fantastic, but it also has to stand up to scrutiny by others who are considered experts in the field. And so think about convincing your readers on why they should continue to read your thesis. And then set the scope. If you don't set the scope, you'll find that you'll really get started and go down that rabbit hole, which would probably never end. You would find that you would continue writing, and there may be a part of that you're not quite happy with, and you rewrite it, and you go back again, and maybe a week later you still aren't happy, and you keep writing and rewriting, or you find a new paper and you think that there's some content in that paper that is relevant to your work, and you really get engaged in writing this document. But you may find that what would ordinarily take you maybe to be between 3 to 5 years, you're now in your 7th, 8th, 10th year. Define the scope and adhere to it. Make sure that you are following what your original idea, what your original problem is that you're aiming to solve, so that you don't end up spending far more time and including some other things that, yes, may be relevant, but think about it. You're going to have a pair of examiners, and do you think that someone who receives a thesis that is 500 pages is going to, look on that document with excitement to sit and have to go through 500 pages as to something maybe around 150 or 200, even 200? Some would be a bit apprehensive to get started at looking at that. So define the scope of your work. The lit review. So you are becoming, through your work, the expert in that area that you have undertaken. And part of that would be to show that you have contemporary knowledge of that chosen area of study. A part of that is, remember, science and research, as it is, and it has been actually for quite a few decades, we build upon the work of others. So yes, your idea may be new and fresh, but it actually would have been built upon what you had been exposed to, either in your professional practice, in industry, or through your academic endeavors. And so you have to also be aware of what others have done or what they are doing in your field of study. You don't want to get to the end of your thesis, right, and be ready to submit, only to find a paper that has already addressed the area and the issue that you have in your thesis. That means 3, 4, 5 years would have been washed down the drain. So make sure you have an idea by going through as keenly as possible those that are in your area and the work that they have also done. Okay? You don't want, as I said, to finish that thesis only to be told by an examiner, this is of no use, it has already been done, right? And so in your thesis, you must demonstrate that the work of others in your work is known, that you understand it, that you, in whatever way that is relevant, have applied it to your work, that you've analyzed what they have done. Okay, so they may have done something that's similar, but in your analysis, you may see an error or a specific point that has not been adequately addressed. And that may be the point that or that's the error or the problem that you are actually solving because it has not been adequately addressed by the others. You would have synthesized the information that you would have found, and you would have made a comprehensive evaluation of what it is they have done. That now sets an excellent platform on the stage for you to talk about your work. And that's what the vast majority of your thesis must be about, your work. Because remember, you want to ensure that you will be adding to the existing body of knowledge in your chosen area of study. Okay? And so having completed your research, the first couple of chapters, the introduction and the lit review and so on, then you will begin looking at your actual research and undertaking what it is you need to do. And there are different methodologies that you can incorporate depending on your area, depending on what it is you're doing. And that methodology, or how you actually went about conducting your research, must also be incorporated into your thesis, because the others who are reading it want to ensure that you are rigorous, that what you have done is repeatable. And so describe in as much detail as you could your methodology. It will be one of a few approaches that will be used to develop your proposed solution, the answers, the proofs, the results, and so on. And it should reflect that accomplishment of yours, that the following tasks and steps and so on activities have been performed. And so in that description, you should explain your methodological approach. If it involved data collection, describe those methods. Remember, we want to ensure that there was rigor and it is repeatable. Describe the methods of analysis or evaluation that you also have used in your document. Evaluate and justify the methodological choices that you made. Why did you make this, or why did you take this particular approach in your analysis as opposed to another, right? That also shows your command of the knowledge, right? Not just in your era, but generally in the sciences, in humanities, it doesn't matter. It must be methodological, right? And of course, ensure that you cite all of your sources. That's extremely important. Plagiarism, remember, is something that is not lightly treated or taken into consideration here at the university or many others. Make sure that you, if you're incorporating what others have done, cite it appropriately. And that therefore means to ensure that your references, which is the section that will hold all of the conference papers, the articles, the books, the chapters. It may be somebody else's thesis. You could also include those as items in your references. But again, there are certain ways that you must include those references. And the way that those references are stated and written in your thesis must conform to what we refer to as a style or a citation style. And some examples of those citation styles are Chicago, Harvard, and IEEE. Now, you may not see the specific citation style in the guide. If you do, that's fine, but your particular area, your particular discipline may have its own preference for a style, and that's fine, right? And so that style, once you adopt it, be consistent. And so, as we say, that's what's used to format the information on who you're citing in your document. And so it might be that your citation style dictates that your references be arranged in alphabetical order with an author's surname first. It will also describe if there is a single author, two authors, or three or more authors, how are those referenced, right? That's why it's important. And so it will also include specific punctuation. Be specific, be detailed. If you aren't, the library will be, and it will end up being a back and forth between you and the librarian trying to get you to adhere and conform to the particular citation style. It is that important, okay? And therefore, that means that your choice of methodology will fall into one of three broad categories. It will either be qualitative, quantitative, or design science. And what do I mean by those? So when we refer to a qualitative methodology, then you're talking about concentrating on the collection and analysis of subjective data. And don't worry, I'm going to, in particular, have a little table that compares the qualitative and quantitative, and you'll see why those two in particular. And so, and forgive me for the generalization, but it's usually surrounding people's perceptions. And that may be the starting point. And with that qualitative approach, the intended outcome is to gain some greater insight into those very same perceptions, maybe to provide an explanation on why those perceptions exist. And hopefully that will be your contribution to the body of knowledge. Your approach or your methodology could also be quantitative. And that approach concentrates on what can be measured. And that involves the collection and analysis of objective data. And again, typically, this is a generalization, incorporates some mathematical tool or tools and techniques. Prof. Weber mentioned statistics. It could include discrete math or calculus or anything else of the sort, right? And so before I move on to design science, and I'll be finishing shortly, I don't want to keep too much more time. We have here qualitative versus quantitative because these are the two predominant general methodologies. So we have the type of reasoning involved. With qualitative, it's inductive, where we infer the general from the specific. We have quantitative, where it is deductive. And in that case, we infer the specific from the general. We have the link with concepts. We have the actions that are involved, the outcomes, and the approach to the validity. And so here we would see the truth that's seen as context bound or socially constructed, or the approach where the truth is seen as objective and universal, like the proof of a theorem. And I specifically made, as I said, the comparison between the qualitative and quantitative because those two are the predominant research methods and methodologies. But there's the third, the design science, which involves the creation of information technology artifacts, which include prototypes as a proof of what it is proposing in the thesis. And so an artifact can be a construct, a model, a method, or some instantiation. And so just to summarize, your research generally and what you're aiming to do should fall within one of these. And you conduct research to find facts. That's the descriptive that Prof. Weber made mention of. You could identify patterns, which is more exploratory. You could explain the whys or the hows, which again is more analytical. You could forecast the likelihood of a particular event, which is more predictive. And you could also improve the current state of the art or the current practice, which is more along the lines of problem solving. And so finally, I would like to suggest to you that having decided on an area, having decided to undertake this thing of research, it takes time and effort. The onus will be on you, not your supervisor, not other members of your research group if you're a part of one, not your advisors, right? Those who will be part of your advisory board. It is on you. And so my final recommendation is to choose something to investigate that you think will likely hold your interest for some time to come, because the endeavor is going to be one that takes you a few years at least. And so again, thank you everyone for the time, and I hope this was informative. Thanks again to my colleagues and friends at the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. So, Prof. Marcia, back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Curtis. And I told you that Curtis is the associate dean who came after me. So when I'm in my graduate subcommittee, Curtis used to be the one who sit right at my right hand, and I used to appreciate his keen sense of knowing his students. He's a computer scientist, and you hear he's talking about methodology. You would never know that he's a computer scientist. But I also did, just when I became associate dean in 2010, I also did his PhD oral, and I remember his young son sitting there, and that young man just graduated the other day. So congratulations. Curtis, are you gonna stay with us, or are you gonna take a few questions?
I see Tiffany Wallace has
Yeah,
raised,
yeah.
so I'll take at least a couple of.
Okay, go ahead, Tiff.
Hi, yes. So with respect to the method, if your research is just following like a standard operating procedure, like in the manuscripts or in the journals, they usually say the research was conducted as per the method describing, etc., et al. But you're saying that we're supposed to explain it in details. However, if we explain it in details, I mean, there's so many ways that you can change, a method in terms of the wording. Wouldn't it have a high similarity score when you check it through the plagiarism software?
Well, remember, that's not, it could, but once you cite it or cite the sections that you're taking from some other source, that's not a problem. The other thing that you'll have to remember is you can take that methodology and that general description of the methodology, and you would have used it in a way that is helpful in your own undertaking, in your own research, and that's also fine. So you may have changed an aspect of it or a step because of your particular circumstances or the resources that you have, and that's fine. The idea is it will be understood based on how it has been written and included in your specific thesis, that this was actually a part of your work and the study that you did as opposed to the general description of a methodology. And those general descriptions are quite brief. So you would take that general description and then use it and apply it, as I'd also mentioned earlier, to what it is you're actually doing in your work. And that's fine.
And
Okay,
Tiff,
thank you.
as the one who is responsible for reviewing all the Turnitin reports, even if we take a communication or a methodology from somewhere else, we must express it in our own voice. So there are 10 ways in which you can say you light the Bunsen burner or you mix two chemicals together. So you can't just imagine that it's like a cut and paste from somewhere else and you use it. You must describe in your own voice what you did based on what you understood the methodology would require you to do. So it doesn't come up if you write it in your own voice.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, Curtis, I don't see any other hand up. So we're going to move on. Thank you very much. Curtis, are you going to stay with us?
At least for maybe another 5 to 10 minutes. Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. So just drop your email in the chat. So, if somebody has a burning question that you can help with, then you'll be there. Okay. So Miss Georgia Bennett is our next speaker, and GB, my GB, I call her because I don't make any decision in the Office of Graduate Studies and Research without checking with GB. In fact, GB is part of my health plan. So her office is at one end of the building and my office is at the other. And every day I walk to her office numerous times just to check to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So Georgia is the Assistant Registrar in the Office of Graduate Studies and Research, and she's going to tell you about submission for examination. Very important things that you need to know, because there's nothing more disappointing than when a student submit their thesis and you have to call them back and say, listen, man, you don't have your seminars, or your examiners haven't been approved or something. Just when the student believe that they're over it and it's gone and it's to the examiners, something pops up. So listen to this very well. GB, your time.
Thank you, Marcel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our workshop session. So for this presentation, I will highlight the steps that must be taken before submitting your thesis or research paper for examination. I will also look at thesis and research paper submission, examination procedures, examination fees, and deadline dates, and postgraduate award pending, also known as PJ pending status. So before submitting your research paper for examination, students enrolled in taught programs must ensure that you're currently registered, you have completed and submitted the application for examination of research paper form. This form can be found on our website, as well as a copy can be given to you at our front desk. It is also made available in the chat. The link to the form is also made available to you in the chat. This form must be submitted not less than 2 months before the expected date of submission. And this will allow for the nomination of your and approval of your examiners before it's time for you to submit. Students must ensure that the title of the research paper is the same as the one included in the application for examination of research paper form. If after you have submitted your application for examination form and your research paper title has changed, you are required to write requesting a change of research paper title. You must include the new title, and this request must be supported by your supervisor before submission to our office for consideration and approval by the director. Students enrolled in research degree programs must ensure that you're currently registered, that you have registered and completed the correct number of credits for taught graduate level courses. MPhil students must complete 6 credits and PhD students 9 credits. You must ensure that you have registered and completed your research seminars. MPhil students must complete 2 seminars and PhD students 3 such seminars. And students who have upgraded from MPhil to PhD, your upgrade seminar can be used as one of the seminars, but it must not be your final seminar. And candidates enrolled in professional doctorates are to observe requirements specified in the faculty regulations. Students must also ensure that you have completed the application for examination of thesis form using the Graduate Studies Thesis Tracker, which can be accessed via SAS. This form must be completed at least 3 months before the submission of your thesis for examination. And again, this will allow for the nomination and approval of your examiners before it's time for you to submit. And the students must ensure that the title of the thesis is the same as the one included in the application for exam form. Similar to the research paper, if your thesis title has changed after you have submitted your application for exam form, you are required to write a request seeking a change of your thesis title. Your new thesis title must be included in the request, and it must be supported by your supervisor before you submit that request to Graduate Studies for consideration and approval. So before a student is ready to submit his or her thesis or research paper for examination, your department must ensure that all examiners are nominated and approved. And we normally ask students to just check with their departments or Graduate Studies to find out whether this process is completed, because if the process is not completed, it will result in a delay in the examination of your paper. So we usually ask students like 2 to 3 weeks before you're ready to submit, just check with your department or Graduate Studies to find out if the process is completed. Moving on now to thesis and research paper submission. The following research papers and theses are submitted to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research for examination using the electronic submission of projects, also known as ESPRO portal. And this you access via SAS. All MA Cultural Studies research papers, all MSc Nutrition research papers, all MPhil theses, all PhD and professional doctorate theses. Research papers not mentioned above are submitted to the respective departments for examination. And this slide is speaking specifically to students who submit their thesis or research paper at the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. If you submit at your department, they will provide you with their guidelines. So students who are required to submit their paper or thesis at the Office of Graduate Studies and Research on the day of submission of the thesis or research paper for examination, the following documents must be uploaded to ESPRO: your thesis or research paper, the certificate of completion form, examination payment receipt, ethics approval letter if applicable, Turnitin results, and publications if applicable. Moving on now to examination procedures for research papers. Internal examiners of research papers must submit their reports to the Board for Graduate Studies and Research through the campus registrar within 1 month of the research paper's delivery. External examiners are required to submit their reports within 2 months. All examiners of theses are required to report to the Board for Graduate Studies and Research through the campus registrar within 2 months of the date of delivery of a thesis. Oral examination, and this is speaking specifically to PhD and professional doctorate students. Oral examinations will be held within 1 month of receipt of the written reports of all the examiners, unless the campus committee in any particular case decides otherwise. The Office of Graduate Studies and Research normally communicates with a student, informing him or her that we have asked the Deputy Dean for Graduate Studies and Research to make the arrangements for your oral examination. The Deputy Dean will in turn communicate with you regarding the proposed date and time and your availability. Candidates who fail to present themselves for any oral or written examination or fail to resubmit a revised thesis within the time period specified, fail to satisfactorily make alterations in accordance with regulations 3.29 and 3.32, and who have not been granted an extension shall be deemed to have failed the examination and shall be required to withdraw. Now, this slide is just to highlight the different stages that your thesis go through once it is submitted for examination. This information is also can be seen in your thesis guide, which was made available to you in the chat. So there are fees associated with the examination of your thesis or research papers. For research paper or research projects, the examination fee is $1,500. For MPhil, it's $2,000. PhD and professional doctorate is $3,000. And these fees are payable at the cashier, at the bursary. Moving on now to deadline dates for submission of your thesis or research papers for the 2024-2025 academic year. The deadline date for semester 2 submission is May 9. And the final deadline date for the 2024-2025 academic year is July 31, 2025. And August 1 is the beginning of the new financial year. So if you did not make the deadline date of July 31, you'll be billed full tuition fee and miscellaneous fee as of August 1. So please note that the previously mentioned deadline dates serve as a guide and aim to provide transparency regarding the transition of students to the postgraduate award pending, also known as PGA pending status. This status is assigned to students who submit their thesis or research paper on or before the specified deadline date. Once this occurs, the student's status will be updated to PGA pending in the subsequent semester, and they will be required to register and pay the PGA pending fee of $2,000. So you won't pay the full tuition fee. You'll only be required to pay $2,000 to keep your name on the books until your degree has been awarded. Students submitting their thesis or research paper directly to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research, or our office, is responsible for identifying these individuals and assigning them the PGA pending status. However, students submitting their research paper to their respective departments, it is the department's responsibility to notify our office of the students who have been granted this status. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, GB, Ms. Bennett. These are important things that you need to keep in mind, especially the fee paying part, okay? You want to get it in by July 31st, which means that you must get it in by mid-July. So if there's anything that is wrong, we can fix it and get it back by July 31st. Don't come here on the 30th and there's something wrong and you can't get to submit because something else you missed, because it's a lot to remember. Okay, so I see Antoinette and Stephanie. So we start with Antoinette, then we'll do Stephanie, and I see Marcia and Kemar. So Antoinette, go ahead and ask Miss Bennett your question.
Good evening, everyone. I would just ask Miss Bennett just to go back to her first 2 slides, please. I just need to capture the information there.
In a minute.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so while she's doing that, Steph, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to know you for an MPhil upgrade. I am in my 2nd year now. Am I too late to apply for it?
You're in your 2nd year of your MPhil,
Yes.
full-time or
Yes, miss.
part-time?
Full-time.
No, it's never too late. Even after the 3 years full-time or the 5 years, even after the 2 years full-time, or I think it's 5 years part-time for the, after the 2 years full-time or 3 years part-time, there is always a get out of jail free card. We can write to the PVC and ask for a waiver of the regulation, and the PVC has not refused us yet because we understand, man. We understand that life happens. So even if you're overtime, you can ask for a waiver of regulation 1.40, and we'll send it to the PVC with supporting documents.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ford.
Okay, all right, Marcia?
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Thank
you
sorry,
so
Marcia. GB needed to go back to this first slide. I hope I
Yes,
forgot who it
and
was.
it was Antoinette, and I
Antoinette,
think it's
yeah.
the previous slide. I think slide 3 I'm seeing, because this is slide 4.
Okay, slide 3.
Thank you. Let me just capture this information.
Okay, all right.
Thank you
Everybody's
so
good?
much.
So we'll continue the conversation. Marcia.
Right, thank you so much, Prof. I just wanted to find out, I don't know if Miss Benny can go back to the slide that actually spoke about withdrawal. Like if the student is not given like an extension, the student may be asked to withdraw, or didn't catch that. So I just wanted to go back to that slide, please.
Right, so while she's looking for that, Kemar, maybe you can go with your question.
Yes, quickly. Good afternoon and thanks again. So the deadline for submission, if you could remind me,
Mm.
Yeah.
Is it July 31st?
July 31st, which means that do not come on July 31st because something might happen and you're not ready. Come on the 15th of July. So if there's anything, we can fix it and clear it up for July 31st.
And this submission, as it's related to
fees. August 1, new set of fees, Kemar.
August 1, new set of
Yeah,
fees.
and we know that that's important to our students. August 1, new semester, new set of fees.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. That's the only thing that has to do with.
Okay, so the submission of the papers themselves is left up to the department.
Yeah, but once you have submitted to the department, remember the rest of it's under examination. So you have to make sure you get it in there before July 31.
Before July 30.
Yeah. All
Okay,
right.
thank you so much. All right.
Right, so remember we have another speaker. So I'm gonna take Julia and then I'm going to ask the others to wait until the end. Okay? Because we're running a little over time. So we have after the next speaker, which is Miss Tugwell, then we'll take all the questions at the end. All right, or you can just send your question to Miss Bennett in the chat and she can respond if you're not able to stay. Okay, Julia, go ahead.
Send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah. All right. And GB, you're going to stay with us, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Right. So you can take some questions at the end. All right. So let's move on then. So Mr. Tugwell.
Okay. Sorry.
Preparing the thesis for submission.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
You take my questions afterwards. You had called earlier, but nothing.
Oh, yeah, Julia, we were waiting on you. Yeah.
Oh, because I just want to ask quickly, Miss Bennett, when is the deadline for MPhil upgrade? I don't think I remember hearing it.
Deadline for MPhil upgrade? There is no,
Yes.
We don't have a deadline for MPhil upgrade.
Okay. And in terms of preparing for it, are there some requirements?
But yes, those are in the regulations. You would have to
regulations.
Read. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Read the regulations. There are several regulations in there about the MPhil upgrade.
Okay, will do.
All
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. So if your thesis is not approved by the library and your research paper, it cannot be submitted. So all our MPhil and PhD thesis, they go to the library, and if graduate studies does not get a letter from the library to say everything is tip-top shape, it's not going to get examined. So listen to this very carefully. Ms. Tugwell, good to see you again. We do this every year.
Thank you, Professor Roy. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just proceed with my presentation. All right, so the topics to be discussed this evening, I will run through what is left there. So the Mona Information Literacy Unit, which is actually in the main library at the UM Mona campus. Then we're going to talk about pre and post thesis submission, so that's thesis consultation and thesis scrutiny, traditional thesis, manuscript thesis, and then the campus librarian's certificate of acceptance. All right, so the Mona Information Literacy Unit will be very important to you because that is where the theses are coordinated and disseminated to librarians in all of the UM Mona libraries for thesis consultation and thesis scrutiny review. We liaise with the Office of Graduate Studies and Research, thesis scrutiny, and campus librarians certificate of completion matters, etc. We facilitate information literacy sessions for foundation English courses and other courses as requested, etc. So thesis writing, Ms. Bennett had shown you a condensed version of this, but this is at page 29 of the UA thesis guide, which was shared earlier, and you want to pay attention to it as we proceed. So the librarian's role in thesis reviews. So in the thesis guide on page 3, it says the librarians of the campus libraries are available for advice on the technical requirements of the thesis. That is the layout, the arrangement of words, etc., at any stage in the production of the thesis. They can also assist in locating the requisite scholarly information. So we'll assist you and guide you through doing that. And we'll advise on appropriate style manual and how to credit sources to avoid plagiarism. So submission documents needed for thesis consultation. So you're gonna need the thesis consultation form. We have what we call a thesis checklist, which is just a condensed version of the your thesis guide, where we're actually asking the questions, but things that are already outlined in the guide. And of course, you need to submit the thesis that you want to be corrected. So this is just a part of the thesis checklist that will be sent to you once you make contact with us, and I'll show you how that is done later. And there's a QR code there if you want to go and see the full thesis checklist that is required of you once you're submitting to us. So the thesis consultation is the informal consultation. So some persons opt to do it, some persons don't. And this is usually done pre-submission. So you make a request through Melu via email to melu.library@umona.edu.jm. So that Melu is Mona Information Literacy Unit. Thesis consultation form is completed, so you have an example of part of it there. And once you do that, it takes 5 to 10 business days for a librarian to review. And our thesis consultation is requested post-thesis submission, after candidate has defended their thesis for you to receive the campus librarian certificate of acceptance. So that will be sent to graduate studies on your behalf once everything is okay. The Zoom thesis consultations can also be arranged. I heard one student say earlier that they're not in Jamaica, so we do facilitate Zoom thesis consultations for you to be able to meet with a librarian online at a mutually convenient time. So the formal thesis, that's when you submit totally to graduate studies. And this is sent by graduate studies to the library, and it has a longer turnaround time, usually about 4 weeks. An individual report is prepared by a librarian, highlighting areas to be corrected by the candidate. So what does thesis consultation and thesis scrutiny entail? And on the right-hand side there, you'll see me have the thesis guide. And just for citation style guides, but of course there are others, all right? So those are 4 main ones that are used by students here at the University of the West Indies. So librarian will check thesis for formatting issues as it relates to the UE thesis guide, and that the latest version is 2015. The librarian also reviews the candidate's use of the citation style used by the candidate's faculty, both in text and in the reference or bibliography list. So depending on which citation style you are using, it will be called a reference, it might be called bibliography, it might be called works cited, etc. So the UA thesis guide will supersede what your citation style guide says for issues such as your spacing, figures and tables, your margins, things like that. The Chicago Manual of Style, which is one of the manuals used by quite a number of the faculties, is now in its 18th edition. So the graphic I have there is actually of the 17th edition, and both the 17th and 18th are available through UA so the library's information portal. You are able to access that particular citation style online. The Mona campus will begin using the 18th edition with the other campuses in 2025, sorry, 2026. So the new academic year is when we plan to use, start using Chicago Manual of Style, 18th edition. So arrangement of works for traditional thesis, all right? So for that, this is also in the thesis guide, and you're able to see how you should be arranging your thesis. So you have your title page, you're going to have your thesis, dissertation, project deposit license agreement actually being put in your thesis towards the end when you're actually submitting for final review. And that would have to be completed and signed by you. The title page and the thesis license agreement are not paginated. The other areas, the abstract, you heard a lot about that, acknowledgements, dedication, if you have any, and the list goes on for the traditional thesis, the things, the items that should be in there. In addition to that, you have the text of the thesis, and then the end pages. So we spoke earlier about bibliographies, references, whatever it is called based on the citation style that you're using, and then your appendices if you have any, right, for a traditional thesis. So moving ahead. So arrangement of works, traditional thesis. So some things to consider include the font size. So if you're choosing 11, you use 11 throughout the thesis. If you're choosing 12, same thing. And it also applies to the title page, right? So you want to make sure that that is also in the same size font, right? And the thesis guide says it should be a standard serif font. So Times New Roman is one of the standard serif fonts that you can use. There are headings, and it says all major headings, such as your abstract, your acknowledgement, table of contents, list of figures, etc., should be in bold, centered, capital letters. All right? And this can be found in page 4 of the thesis guide. It's there. You just have to read it. All right, and the subheadings should be in sentence case or title case with first set of major words capitalized. Margins, 2 inches on the left to be left for binding, and 1 inch for all other margins. So the top, the right, and the bottom margins should be 1 inch. All right, and we spoke about the preliminary pages. So the abstract begins these pages. So it begins the preliminary pages, and the pagination there is lowercase Roman numerals. All right, so it must be single space, except if you have a preface or if you have the table of contents. So most people have a table of contents. So it would be 1.5 spacing for if you have a preface or if you have a table of contents. Everything else in the preliminary pages is supposed to be single space. All right, the text of the thesis is there. And for the text of the thesis, the pagination begins with Arabic numerals at chapter 1. And this must be 1.5 line spacing. And each chapter must begin on a new page with no display page. So with the traditional thesis, there is no display page. Then you have your end pages as per citation style guide being used for the references, the bibliography, whatever it is. So if it's APA, it would be double spaced, all right? And it goes on. So this is what the title page for MPhil and PhD thesis would look like, and that can be found on page 26 of the thesis guide. It's important to note that if you are, once you're doing your title page, the title of your work should be in bold capitals. It should be single spaced. The title of the degree should be the center of the page, right? So you see the example there on the left. And it's when you reach to the middle of the thesis, the title page there, you have a thesis submitted in fulfillment of the requirement, right? So once it is that is MPhil and PhD thesis, you're submitting in fulfillment, right? The third line should have the name of the degree that you're doing. the word of, and in lowercase letters on the title page precedes the name of the university, all right? And that is all on the center there. Then you have the use of the word by in lowercase letters too, and the full name of the candidate as officially registered. So if you have a middle name, that's how you are registered, you have to put the name there as is, right? The year of the conferral of the degree would be put there. And then on the bottom left-hand corner, you would have your department information. So that is in this example here, it says Department of Geography. And the faculty there is Faculty of Food and Agriculture. Well, that was before. So more than likely it would be faculty. This is St. Augustine. So for us, it would be Faculty of Science and Technology. And then you'd have Mona Campus, all right? So the campus, department information, faculty, and campus on the left at the bottom of the page. Now, when you're submitting for the taught master's research papers, projects, etc., on page 27 of the thesis guide in Appendix 3, you want to make sure that you, again, have your title of the work in bold capitals, again, to be single space. The title of the degree should be in the center of the page, but in this case, you're going to have submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirement, right? And then you have the name of the university, and you, of course, you have the of above it. Then you don't have any by in this situation. It's just the candidate's name, and you have the year, right? Then you have the department information, faculty, and campus on the bottom left corner there. Now for your abstract here, this is an example of a sample abstract, and you will note that the title here is the title as it is on the title page of your thesis, all right? And in this case, it is in title case, but the word abstract is in bold capital letters, bold centered capital letters, all right? The title of the degree is in title case, as was pointed out. Candidate's full name, as you put it on the title page, it should be one paragraph, should not include any quotations or references, single space. Professor Weber's pointed to it being 300 words maximum. There are keywords placed after the abstract, and the candidate's name should not be a keyword unless it is an alternative form of their name. So each keyword should be separated by a semicolon, as is seen there, and a full stop ends the list of keywords. All right. So as it relates to figures, tables, and illustrations, etc., these should appear in the text closely following to the point where they are first discussed, usually no further than the following page. So titles for tables should be placed at the top of the table aligned to the left, all right? And this is what the thesis guide says. Titles for figures and illustrations should be placed below aligned to the left, and sources given if not an original source. So usually you could put the source, the author of the source, their last name, or if it's an organizational author, you would have the organization's name, comma, and the year to indicate where you have gotten that from. You would do the full bibliographic citation in your reference list or works cited, whatever you call it. All right. In the list of figures, list of tables, and list of illustrations, etc., a colon or full stop should be used to separate the word figure. So example, figure 1, full stop, or figure 1, colon, and you could do the same for table. All right, whichever one you choose, just use it consistently, whether in the list and also in the text of the document, wherever you place the title of the figure or table. So our end pages the bibliography references, works cited, works consulted, whatever it is. A fundamental root of good scholarship is that the basic research is reliable, accurate, and that credit is given to all sources used in the preparation of the work. And this is represented in the UE Thesis Guide on page 15. I've heard it reiterated throughout the course of this presentation, and this little presentation, and we cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to cite the sources that you use. So all references, whether they are listed in footnotes, endnotes, or bibliographies, must conform to stylistic requirements, including spacing. A list of the style manuals recommended by each faculty or department is given in Appendix 1, the UE Thesis Guide, 2015, pages 22 and 23. Current editions of the style should be used unless permission is given from the OJSR, to Office of Graduate Studies and Research, for candidates to use an older edition of the style, depending on how long they've been in the system, that kind of thing. Please note that the Faculty of Social Sciences has added APA 7th and Harvard to their list of styles to be used. So that would not be in the thesis guide, because that was published in 2015. And since then, Graduate Studies has sent out a memo with that. Chicago Manual of Style, as I pointed out earlier, is in its 18th edition, and we'll start using that in 2025-2026 academic year. So end pages, your appendices. This will contain research material which is pertinent to the thesis. So if you have like questionnaires, surveys that you did, that kind of a thing, you could put like a sample of what they look like. The appendices should not exceed 20% of the title of the thesis, right? All right, so it continues the sequence of Arabic page numbering. And what will happen here is when you have 2 or more, they should be designated Appendix A, Appendix B, etc. So you use letters for them. Tables and figures in appendices should be numbered Table A.1, Table A.2, or Figure A.1, A.2, etc. So there's also the manuscript-based thesis, and some persons may opt to use that method. And if you do that, you'll be using the UE Thesis Guide 2015, page 17, and it continues, in addition to the new guidelines, which came into effect in 2021. So you can find that document on the Office of Graduate Studies webpage. But what it is a collection of papers put together in one cohesive unit. A thesis remains a report of a single program of research. The papers do not have to be submitted to a journal. They can include conference presentations that have been published, accepted, submitted, or prepared for publication. This thesis must have connecting text before and after each manuscript or chapter, demonstrating the linkage between your manuscripts. The connecting text should be a part of the last paragraph of a chapter, an introduction to your next chapter. Line spacing, margins, font size, tables, figures, preliminary pages, etc. remain the same as for traditional thesis. This manuscript is also bound into one physical thesis as the traditional thesis. And some other things about the manuscript-based thesis. Talks about the preliminary pages. As we said, it would be as was indicated earlier with the traditional thesis. The difference here, though, is that your abstract should be a general abstract covering the entire thesis. So you'll be talking about all the different manuscripts that have been submitted in there. Remember Professor Weber indicating that maybe suggesting that you could do your abstract at the end, you know, so that you're able to give a comprehensive summary of what it is that you have done in your thesis. So the general introduction You should have references in this at the end, and each chapter should have a display page showing the chapter number and title in bold capital letters centered at the top of the page and the beginning of each chapter. Each individual chapter should have its own abstract, its own keywords, its own introduction, methods, results, discussion, references, overall synthesis, and summary. An overall listing of all references, including the thesis from introduction and chapters, should be put at the end. So every chapter has its own references, right? But you're going to do an overall listing of all the references at the end, followed by your appendices. So just some points to highlight here about that. And this is what a sample thesis scrutiny report will begin looking like. You know, this is like the first page. After that, we will look at the different areas that were highlighted as it relates to the arrangement of the thesis. So the campus librarian certificate of acceptance is what you're aiming to get at the end. And this certificate is issued after the following is done. The candidate makes corrections proposed by examiners, and they make corrections proposed by the librarian in thesis scrutiny report. And this is in relation to persons who are doing MPhil, PhD, the Masters of Cultural Studies, MA in Cultural Studies, MA in Nutrition, that go to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. This would pertain to them. Candidate submits thesis and completes a thesis consultation form, thesis checklist for the librarian to do a final review and indicate whether the thesis was satisfactorily done. The thesis certificate is prepared and signed by the campus librarian and is issued to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research on behalf of the candidate electronically. Candidates must complete that declaration form, is what it's called on the Graduate Studies website, or it's also called Thesis Deposit License Agreement, and include this with the thesis. And as was pointed out earlier, this comes directly after your title page, and it must be completed and signed by the candidate. The candidate will prepare and submit your 3 unbound copies of his or her thesis to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. So here we have some useful forms and documents. The links are there for them. And you want to find us everywhere as it relates to the library. The email for the Mona Information Literacy Unit is there. And other ways you can find the library. So thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Ms. Tugwell. That was very useful. You see all the little things that you need to get in place to make sure we get that library certificate so that your work will be over and the examiner's work will begin. All right, so we're going to move into our question and answer section, but before we do that, I want to invite you to 2 other seminars that we're doing. So next Thursday at 2 p.m., we're going to be doing a seminar from 2 to 4 online again, Pathway to Graduate Success. So we have Professor Dibby, who is going to be telling us about excellence in graduate research. We have a mental health expert that will be giving you some tips about how to protect your mental health. You know how challenging this is. And we have Adele, who is a colleague from South Africa, and Adele is going to tell you about career enhancement. So those are things that all of us need. Every day, Naomi, I have a little song in my head to keep me sane because sometimes it gets crazy. So that's next Thursday, April 3rd. And then the following Thursday, which is April 10th, we're going to have our second graduate hub So at the Graduate Hub, you're going to have individuals from the Office of Graduate Studies and Research and across the campus to answer any questions you have online. This will be from 11 until 12. You're going to have administrative support from the Office of Graduate Studies and Research, academic advising from the deputy deans from all the faculties, and your graduate coordinators who are available, financial support from the bursary. So if you have financial question, the bursary will be here to answer those. Exam inquiries. Remember, exam is coming up. So if you have any concerns, come and get your answers. Career and placement will be here for career counseling. Research ethics will be here to answer your questions about applying for ethical approval. The health center will be here to answer any questions, and the library, of course, will join. And what we will have is different rooms with all of these individuals. So if you have an examination question, you tell us, we send you to the room where exams is, and then you can get your question answered and get back to work and get back to lunch right away. So we invite you to join us for our second Graduate Hub on April 10th and Graduate Success on April 3rd. And Cameroon will place the links in the chat so you can register, so we can share with you. If you have ideas about other needs that you have, we do seminars because our graduate students tell us that they have needs. So if there are other things that you want us to talk about, just let us know and we will get the experts to come and present that information to you. Julia, I'm trying to remember if you got your question answered, because we're in our question and answer session now.
I think I did. Yeah, I was talking about the upgrade. I think I was referred to the regulations. So 114.0, right? The requirements are upgrade.
Right. And remember, if you don't satisfy that and you're outside the timeline, then we have a get out of jail free card and we call that a waiver and we send it to the PVC and ask if we can break that rule. So you just pursue it.
Because now April almost, and I kind of wondered what's happening, you know? How quick should I move?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
All right. Thank you.
Life happens and we deal with it. Naomi, hey, how can we help?
Hi, Prof. Marcy. Hello, everybody, colleagues. Good afternoon. Firstly, I really want to say thank you. I mean, this, I think I've been at sea for a little while. I'm an expert sailor by this. But as I say to people all the time, the government has not yet taxed thank yous. So as many times as possible, we should say thank you. So thank you for this. I mean, it's been very reassuring. And I think the one that you have for next month on mental health. Oh, yeah. Goodness, because you can feel like you're terribly at sea. I just have a couple of clarifying questions to ask. One to Ms. Tubwell. Is it that when you upgrade from the for the Chicago style, which is a 25th edition based on what I heard, if my ear and my brain are working together, would you still be using APA, and what version of APA would you be using at that time, if it's so?
So it's Chicago that I spoke about, and we'll still be using APA. APA is still in its 7th edition. Chicago is the one that has gone to 18th. So what will happen is that we're still doing 17th at this point, and some persons who are already in the programs will continue to use 17th, but 18th is what we're telling you, that if you're going to be in the game next year, you probably will have to try and convert to 18. Other than that, the graduate studies can indicate, and your supervisor can indicate that they wanted to keep that old version, right? So they can give you permission to continue with the older version of the citation style, if it is that you were using 17 before.
And for those who are using APA, we can continue using 7th.
Right, because 7th is still in. It's when when it's upgraded. So what we do, we try to use the current styles of all the citations. So we're just indicating to you that Chicago has now gone to 18th. All right, that's all that we're indicating to you, so that you're mindful that if it is you're finishing this year, it won't affect you, but if it is that you're just starting out, it's important for you to note that you're not going to be using 17th. You could try and convert your stuff to the 18th from now. All right.
All right, thanks a
Hope
lot.
that answers your
For
question.
it absolutely did. Thanks. For Prof. Marcy's GB, can I ask, it's throughout the process that you can submit, there's no deadline for submitting the paper, nor is there a deadline for any upgrade request. And the second part of my question to Mrs. Bennett, and I see you've done the chop, which is interesting. If you have more than the required credits, is that considered in any way as I was going to say a compliment, but is that weighted as something that would be beneficial to you, or you just wasted your time doing extra credits for something you didn't need to?
Right, so let me take the extra credits. That's to your credit. We assume that the reason why you would have done these courses is because you think it's going to help you in your research. And if you, let's say you're doing an MPhil and you've done 9 credits, then when you upgrade to the PhD, you won't need to do any more. But if you have 6 and you upgrade, then you need to do 3 more to meet the 9 credit requirement. So it's to your benefit, man. Learn a little something different and be well-rounded.
Okay.
What
And
was
the
the other
question I
one?
asked before, is it that you can submit the upgrade or the paper at any time throughout the year?
Yes, you can. So regulation 1.40, and I'm going to read it because we've had several questions. A candidate registered for an MPhil degree who wishes to upgrade his or her registration to the PhD may apply after 1 year. So the minimum is 1 year full-time or 2 years part-time from the date of initial registration, and should complete the upgrade by the end of year 3 for full-time and 5 years for part-time, which means that the deadline to request an upgrade is the end of year 3. And once you're over year 3 as full-time, then you have to ask for that waiver. And for part-time, if you're over 5 years in the MPhil and you want to upgrade, then you have to ask for that waiver. And we send it to the PVC every time, and she hasn't said no yet. So
Thanks for the get out of
life
jail
happens.
card,
Yeah,
right? Life
yeah.
always lights. My final question, comment, and colleagues, bear with me. I'm so sorry to be asking so many, but Prof will tell you that we've been sailing for a while, right? And there is such a thing as the wilderness in this kind of research process. Prof, I wanted to suggest, and I love the fact that there's now very regular kind of interventions for us as students. Kind of feel that we should just leave a full-time job and just take this on entirely full-time, but then life is dynamic for so many of us. But I wanted to suggest, if it's not yet done, I know graduate studies, the Department of Government does it on a monthly basis. But I don't know if graduate studies, your department, would also take on an approach to having, whether it's online or face-to-face, almost TED Talk-esque kind of research discussions by students. What do I mean by that? A big part of this is that many of us are in our own fields, and when you get into research like this, it's an issue of your confidence and building your confidence. And students who are dealing with research and research topics, whether it's in an area that they're actually working in or just getting immersed into whatever they're studying, always need to build confidence. And that platform for us to build the confidence in speaking about the research and speaking about findings, I think it's crucial. So beyond what the departments and faculties do, I'm not sure if there is scope for your department to take on something like that, but that's just my 2 pieces. Thank you so much for entertaining even one question from me, and have a wonderful time. My last thing to everybody is KC will and must win champs this year. Have a good afternoon.
Go with that. So yeah, the TED Talk, and I think I mean, the PVC has a cross-campus research conference every year in around about November. But yeah, that's a good idea. And if the department or the faculty does it, then what happens is only that faculty students will attend. But if graduate studies does it, then we'll get a wide cross section. So we'll think about that and try to fit it into our very busy schedule, as you know. All right, Nams, you take care. Chandra, I see you were waiting for a little bit, and then Delia will come to you.
Hi, good afternoon. The question I wanted to ask, I don't want to ask it in this space.
Oh, you have a question, but it's a private question. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of sensitive.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
Kind of sensitive.
Oh, it's sensitive, and you don't think that the rest of us would learn from it. So okay. So who specifically do you want to speak to? Because then you can do a private chat. Whom specifically do you want to ask this question of?
I'm not even sure because most of the presenters were from the Faculty of Sciences. It's about the thesis outline and what is required for the different chapters. But I'm from
Okay. Yeah, but
education.
that's a nuanced question, and so it might be more useful if you just ask your supervisor, or send to an expert like Professor Weber. He might be able to give you some insight. But usually it's your supervisor and your advisory team that's going to help guide you. We can do big picture things, but there's so much diversity in what we do. It might be best if you discuss that with your supervisory team, the structure of your thesis, an outline of the thesis, or email Dale Weberman. He's so talented. Delia, let's hear you.
Hi, good afternoon again, and thank you very much for this session. I really look forward to these graduate sessions because I learned so much. One of my favorite parts today was get out of jail free card, which
Oh,
I
yes,
will
man.
use soon. But I just have a suggestion for the thesis guide. Considering that a number of changes I think have been made since 2015, whether or not, including what they've just spoken to about Chicago Manual 18, is it possible for them to just say, okay, this is a 2015, but it was upgraded in 2025. So when you're looking online and you see something 2015, you're not thinking that, boy, this is old and there's a newer one, and you still go searching. So yeah, that's my only suggestion in terms of updating the date and just
Updating the
making
thesis guide. Okay, yeah.
thesis guides from 2015 till 2025. It's actually 10 years old.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for
Thank you
that.
very much.
Yeah, man. We appreciate it. So, it's 12 minutes past 4. If there are any other burning questions, you can always send them to postgrad@uwimona.edu.jm. Remember that the presentations will be shared. Link to the recording can be shared so that, if you ever want to go back and check anything and you see we widen your network, because now you can reach out to Professor Weber. He was a PVC for graduate studies and research that was in charge of graduate studies for all the campuses. So he's an excellent advisor and have a wide view of what happens in graduate studies. And he was our principal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us. If you need us in the Office of Graduate Studies and Research, just reach out. Remember to check us out next Thursday for Excellence in Graduate Research. Pathway to Graduate Success. The link is in the chat. You can just click and register. And the following Thursday, which is April 10th, come back for the Graduate Hub. Whatever questions you have, we will be able to deal with it because we'll have a plethora of stakeholders from across the campus, and we will be in different rooms. So if you have a need, you get your need answered and you're on your way. All right? So have a good weekend and get some work done, and we look forward to the submission of your research paper, your research project, and your research thesis so we can award your degree. All the best, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.